question for you is, when there's so much going on every day and you're trying to instill a culture in police officers that are working for you and public scrutiny while keeping a culture and keeping kind of whatever positivity you can, how do you keep it all together?
A couple of things that are important for that is one is being consistent. Being consistent. You know, I've been asked at numerous press conferences, what are you going to do if the National Guard comes? What are you going to do if federal officers come? We're going to do the same thing we did yesterday. Well, members need to know that the world is not going to change just because of this impact. Now, we all know it's going to change. Everybody knows it's going to change. It's going to be different if this happens or this happens or if this happens. And they know that there's going to be renewed expectation upon them and renewed sacrifice and renewed scrutiny, and everybody knows that. But I don't have to broadcast that. I have to assure them that we're going to be consistent to our culture, to our standards, to our expectations, to our values, to our beliefs. So I really feel strongly in that consistency.
But you know, I was just thinking about, I think it's JP Morgan, go with me on this one. But you know, their culture is that we are going to do first class business in a first class way. And if you just think about that saying really quick, you kind of know exactly what you're getting into. You know what that means as a customer. You know what that means as an employee. You know what that means as a leader. And as you enter into that culture, even if you're day 1 or day 100, you kind of have a feeling. You have a bit of a roadmap and a blueprint around what is expected of you. And so the idea of what corporate culture could be, or culture at all, you know, there's the definition of what it is, you know, that systems of values and beliefs that everybody buys into. And then it really is the nervous system that can run your company. And you gotta be careful, because it can either go good or bad, and I think we've seen it a lot of different ways.
In our firm, one of the absolute beliefs we have is that better humans make for better leaders. And we only work with clients who believe that. We know who our people are. We know who our customer is. So if you believe better humans make for better leaders, well, now we're going to play. So all of us, we have not only an opportunity, but I believe we have a responsibility as leaders to do everything we can to send people home, our teammates, send them home as better versions of themselves than they would experience in any other company in town. And you start to think about that. If I can create a culture where we win at work and where people are cared for and nurtured and coached up in a way to where they go home and they're better husbands, better wives, better partners, better moms, dads, they take better care of their health, they can contribute more energy, well, that starts to spill over into the neighborhood. And when it starts to spill over into the neighborhood, now our subculture, what's happening between the 9 and 5, is starting to impact what happens between the 5 and 9.
A couple of things. I mean, several years ago, when we started hiring police officers and we put them into training and we would give them information and they would look at us and say, why? That was a big culture shift. When I started, you didn't say why. And suddenly we were hiring people who said why. And it really changed how we had to train, how we had to meet them. But the problem is we've got, you know, most cops are on a 25, 30-year arc. So we got new cops asking why, and we got 20-year cops saying, just tell me what you want me to do.
But I can tell you, a boomer versus a Gen A, they can come together if they believe, and I'm going to use maybe JP Morgan again, if they have an understanding that we do first-class business in a first-class way. That becomes the foundation. Now, each one of those generations may express it somewhat differently, but that's the beauty of diversity. That's the beauty of culture. So really embracing these different generations that can apply their knowledge and their superpowers. You know, I think about I'm Gen X. My superpower is I can multitask like nobody's business. I don't need to be, you know, fed or watered after a while. Like, remember, they would just throw us outside and they'll come home at dinner time. You've got a huge workload capacity and you just feel like being in there and being present. Whereas a Gen Z leader can come in, get into an AI dashboard, identify a brand new business plan in a completely different way. We may have both done first-class business in a first-class way, but we've done it differently in a way that's modern, in a way that is focused on the consumer. And so there's some really interesting ways to think about it, but I think generations actually are going to make companies better when we learn how to embrace them. It is just about that shared North Star and the how we're going to get work done that we just need to align on.
Today, intentional curiosity is more important than ever before. And it's because of what you were saying, Chief. Everyone wants to know why from the younger generation. They don't follow just because. So intentional curiosity is actually a superpower of yours if you learn how to leverage it by asking your teammates for their perspective. If they know that they have a voice, if they're asked, if they get to contribute, whether you agree or disagree, whether their opinion is the one that wins at the end of the day, if they know they were valued enough to be heard, and then you explain why the decision's going this way or that way, well, then they know they have a voice, and they want to belong to a culture where they can move the needle and they make a difference. So intentional curiosity comes down to how skilled are you at asking questions, and then does your schedule allow you to be present and to listen? And I'll tell you, I mean, we talked about it earlier, the whole listening piece and being present and looking. You know, they say the number one way you show that you care about somebody is by how you listen to them. And today that's what's under attack in every aspect of our lives, not just in our role as leaders. It's all relationships.
New leaders, and as you're coming into an organization, we were talking about this, you're never more powerful to the board, to your team, to the leadership than you are probably in that first 90 days. Yeah. What I did was I reset standards, and I just said, hey, my expectations of this team is that we operate at this level. We know that this leader was not operating at this level, and that will not be tolerated. So right then and there, I was able to up-level expectations, building on a new culture of excellence. I was able to say the behavior that we will tolerate, but more importantly, behavior that will not be tolerated. And I think that's equally as important in creating culture, because it can't all be smiles and butterflies and rainbows. You have to attack culture or toxic behavior or blockers that are happening at a specific time, and you have to do that with urgency.
The other part of it is a core value in line. You mentioned curiosity a minute ago is curiosity. Another one is vulnerability. And so change is hard. Culture change is even harder. And I just believe in leading with those values, to be curious and to be vulnerable. It's been a tough couple of weeks. And today I was surprised. I had my leadership team, my entire leadership team, captains, commanders, civilian personnel, is about 50 folks, and I had them in a room. We meet, once a month and once every few weeks, and just question answer, just want to be available to them. And I was retelling some of my experiences over the last couple of weeks, and I actually got emotional, and I started to cry for a minute, not recognizing probably how tired I am, and two, how it was impacting me and my family and some of the events. But I've learned over the years that that's okay, and I didn't, blubber through the whole meeting. I just paused for a minute and gathered myself and wiped my eyes and went back about the messaging that we're trying to do. And I think, being willing to allow yourself to be vulnerable demonstrates, hey, we're in this together. We're trying to figure this out. I'm trying to figure this out. And trying to set a standard and expectation in the midst of that for them to be able to follow.
What are the most common missteps you see leaders take or make when they are coming into a new organization, new team? Just people who come in swing in, and what missteps do you see and how do they avoid those?
Yeah, so Maggie mentioned earlier the whole first 90-day thing, and what we'll have clients do when they take new roles is we will have them put together a 100-day plan. One of the very first things you want to do is you actually want to get to know everybody on the team, and you want the team's perspective on the business. What's working well, what's not working well. If they had my job, if they had your job, what would they do? And you're taking notes and validating that you're hearing all of that. What you'll hear is a whole bunch of different perspectives, and you're looking for those common themes. And you can do that up to a certain point. But at week 2, week 3, week 4, depending upon the organization size, the team size, it is time to then shift. And it's okay, I've heard. And like Maggie said earlier, she didn't day one after accepting the job learn about the organization. She did all that homework before she said yes, she'd take the job. So she's formed an opinion and a perspective on how she's going to lead it before she takes the job. Then goes in, interviews, assesses, looks at everything, and then you stand for something. And this is something that is no different today with millennials than it was 100 years ago. People want to follow leaders that are going to take them to a better tomorrow. So within that first 90 days, you have to define that better tomorrow. And that's where vision comes in. And it needs to be so crystal clear that it has magnetic pull power. Clear enough to build strategy to, and compelling enough to cause people to want to risk and sacrifice. It needs those components.
One of the areas that I see leaders misstep is they focus on the competition, not the consumer or the customer. And I think it's really easy to do. So I could come into Athleta and say, I'm going to run the Nike playbook, or I'm going to run the Lululemon playbook. I'm going to run a playbook that I can see that's working or effective in the organization. I think that's when leaders go wrong. Where if you come in and you are focused on your customer, what your customer needs, that you are so consumer obsessed, that's how you're going to win. And I think that's where you can get a lot more followership versus saying, I'm actually just going to run this different playbook. So it's one of my favorite ones, and one that I'd love to guide leaders on, because it's so easy to look at the shiny competition and what they're doing and not win in the market versus minding your authenticity, getting so focused on how you can uniquely and distinctly serve a customer.
I was asked today, because in this group with these 50 so leaders, that, we have some that step up every day. They just are there. They work, 7 days a week, and they're always the one. And we have others that are like, "Whoa, don't call on me. I don't want to have to stay late tonight. I don't want to have, And we do advance notice. I mean, these are not just one-offs, but it's a big commitment. And so I was asked, what's my expectation? And, it's hard for me to apply some of these things. We don't have a lot of rewards to offer people, but my appeal was just to appeal back to why we took this job in the first place. And somebody once said, we talk about work-life balance. What about work-work balance? This work-work balance is realizing doing the things that you enjoyed in the first place. Why'd you come here? What's this about? And I just explained to them, I said, this is a 24/7 public safety organization.
I think the world is going to boil down to probably two big buckets: people that are going to embrace AI and people that are going to kind of just maybe fight against it a little bit. I'm of the camp of embracing it and making sure that we use it for good. But there is so much that you can think about that AI can do in the business mentality, whether that is going in and looking at different business trends, looking at weather trends, consumer trends, competitive research, but doing it in a way that would take an agency or a company, it would take them weeks, months, SOWs that would cost over $1 million. I mean, things can happen at our fingertips. Now, at the same time, I do believe as the rise of AI happens, it is going to still require a very human-centered approach. And so I think as much as it comes up and helps us drive decision-making, information, etc., there still will be a requirement to say, does this make sense or does this not make sense? And do we want to apply this? And what is that human override that's going to be really, really important?
Thank you so much for coming, answering these questions. We're very grateful, and hope everybody enjoyed what they heard. Thank you, everybody.